Welcome to Shiny Side Out with Dave. And a technical difficulty with Maggie, can't seem to get the call. But that's okay, we'll have that sorted out in a jiffy. Let me get through the intro. We're broadcasting on WZZR from Australia for Revolution Radio on revolution.radio, where it's more than just radio, so jump into the chat room if you can. This is show number 329. 329. Meki, if he was on the call, would suggest 920 and 300. And I like the way he does that. Not stealing it from you, Meki, just saying you would have done it. It's on air, online, and on your smart device, so grab an app to listen anywhere or listen at home on a Grace Tabletop digital radio. See how much Australian I added to that then? If you missed it, Solaris' show, she had on today, she had Teresa Dick and Philip K. Dick on. I don't know what they're talking about, actually. Might have been alien implants. I can't leave my Skype call unattended, otherwise it's giving me grief. It only costs $5.95 to jump into the archives. You need to do that monthly to maintain access, but you get all of the host shows in there. You can download them, they're MP3s. You can listen to them wherever you are, to any of those shows, wherever you are. That's how easy that is. Hoping that you do that for us. This station is listener funded. Go ahead. Jump in there. I know we have tons of people in chat room today, so jumping on into the chat room and get going with this.
Dave, are you there?
Oh, of course I'm here.
There?
Are you
Jesus.
here?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. I had to remove that. I had to add the codec back.
You're joking.
No,
man.
Look, never mind. So let's move on, shall we?
Yes, let's move. Hello, everybody. I'm sure you've done the intro. I'm sure.
Oh, there was an intro.
Look, everybody, thanks for bearing with us. This is interesting. Obviously, Microsoft has a lot to answer for. But look, there's a whole bunch of news we'd like to share with you. I don't know how much you've started already, my friend, but
I didn't get to any of it. You go ahead, and I'll fill in the blanks.
Okay, let's blank away. Look, there's a lot of interesting stuff going on, right? And Dave has sent through a whole bunch of things for them to discuss here. Let's talk about the Secret Space Program. Excuse me. So, the Secret Space Program is a we think is a real thing. I think it's much deeper than just a Secret Space Program. I think we have been in space for a very long time. When we're referring to the Secret Space Program here, though, in this context, we're referring to a program that is run by the US, potentially the USSR, and maybe other nations in secret. So they're probably, as far as that is concerned, probably 50 or more years ahead of us, commercially speaking. But I believe, for one, that a lot of this is built on two very distinct platforms. One is potentially visitors, right? The other is ancient tech, very, very ancient tech that was probably searched for by the Nazis during before World War II. Others as well. I mean, this technology has been around for a very long time, and we hear stories about it, in fairy tales and mythologies and fables and so forth. But so that's the Secret Space Program. Dave raised a very interesting point though as well, right? Because so the Secret Space Program is a thing, but this ties as well with the recent Trump initiative to go into space, and there's some very interesting thoughts.
The Space Force.
Yes, the Space Spaceballs, the sequel.
It does sound like a movie.
Schwartz is bigger than yours.
Yeah. And that was the Schwartz.
That's the Schwartz. Yes, thanks, SJ. But yeah, look. But the point is, we'll talk about the final details of the space trade. But the interesting point that Dave raised is: do we need protection from something that is coming or is in space? And is it maybe a fake alien invasion? But if aliens are already here, then is maybe someone new coming along, Dave? But I want you to flesh out those thoughts.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so you've covered off almost all of them. So,
I know, right?
So I know, but basically, this is the way it's supposed to work, right? So basically, Trump's announced a space force, like the Air Force and the Army and the Navy, that don't have force at the end. You don't call it Navy Force, because there's a whole movie. There's a whole movie there, right? The Army Force, but he's going to call it the Space Force. Now, there was all like we've already said. And you already know, because we're preaching to the converted, and that is that there is and has been a secret deep black projects being funded not with congressional oversight or approval. And I was doing some estimations yesterday, Mackie, at a party I was at, and I came to the conclusion there's probably $21 trillion worth of deep black spending. Now, that happens to be the exact current state of debt in the US. That's that unrecoverable debt. That's what their debt ceiling is at the moment, 21 trillion. Because when you look at Rumsfeld, 2 trillion lost on 9/10, or whatever it is, that date. Yeah, that's right. So the 10th of September, he said 2 trillion can't find it. Don't, military spending's got a hole in it. Can't identify where the spending went. So that's all the deep black projects. Now, if you go year to year and you add it up, we're about $21 trillion. So the current US debt overrun that will never get paid back because you just can't pay that much money back is, to me, currently equal to the amount of spend on the deep black project. So if you hadn't been doing those, you'd be all right? America wouldn't be in debt at all. See where I was going with that, right?
No, I hear you.
Yeah. So the question is, how come the new Space Force? It's clear that he has plausible deniability. He has no clue from the way that he's announced this, right? Almost comically. I don't hate the guy. Damn it, democracy says you vote someone in and you see them through their, unless they're a complete ass, you see them through their stint in office and you just vote them out, right? Next time you get an opportunity to vote. And that's the way democracy runs. So, but if he didn't know that there's already a deep black military space program going on, and he's just gone, we should have a space force. What about the other countries? They've now wiped their brow and gone, oh, phew. Now we can basically like an amnesty declare that all of their military ordinances up in space have just arrived.
Yeah, they just got here. What?
Because you remember the Nazis on the Moon movie, Mackie? I loved that film. Right, that was so good. Where they said, "Oh, they're coming," so they wanted to shoot it down, and everyone confessed to already having weapons in space. And they go, "But that's against the treaty, right?"
Yeah, the treaty.
Sure.
Yeah. Good, no.
So no, it's very funny. So the you're right. The 50 years that we've been able to reverse engineer and fly and test and perfect, and all of the underground rumors that exist about there being Walmart-sized. I love Walmarts. Walmarts are everything. You build a Walmart, you can turn it into keeping children in cages, or you can just fly them around. Right? It's become a new standard. It's like qubits in the body. So everything's now a Walmart size something or other. Well, there's a Walmart size penitentiary. There's a Walmart size UFO, and that lady who died of cancer, right? A hideous amount of cancers. So what is it? Because I thought Project Solar Warden in the Deep Black Space program was that thing that was going on. I think that's where all the spending was going. There's these massive ships defending our solar system against intruders, like in Men in Black. But in Men in Black, they didn't show our forces. It just said, look, we're an open seaport, sort of like Hawaii is, I suppose, just allowing visitors to come. We have they've got visas, and, you can't overstay your stay, and, if it's a working visa, you can earn some cash while you're here. That's the way that it was being portrayed a little. But if Project Solar Warden is real, then there's massive ships out there that we populated with, and they're all staffed already, right?
No,
because
absolutely.
There's already off-world officers.
Yeah, quite possibly.
Well, that was McKinnon, the fellow that said he'd hacked into NASA and found, there was, there were terrestrial officers and off-world officers on the payroll. And there was also ship names, like the USS, whatever it is, but they weren't any vessel known today. Even now, 10 years later. So these seemed like maybe they were spacefaring ships. They weren't seafaring ships. So this is the thing that I open with. So there's an open space treaty that represents the basic legal framework of international space law. It's got a bunch of principles, but around that it bars and states quite clearly that's all of them who's in the treaty. It bars them from placing weapons of mass destruction in Earth orbit, installing them on the moon or any other celestial body, for instance. So you can't weaponize space. Is the basic rundown. All right, that's what it says. So,
yeah, that was yesterday, though, Dave. That was yesterday. Today is different. Today is a new day. Today we can weaponize the living crud out of space. We can weaponize, all the weapons. But this is the thing, and this is what I was curious about. Which way will those laser cannons point? Are they going to point outwards? Or are they going to point inwards? Or are they going to point in both directions? Because you can
laterally at the other satellites, Mickey.
The other satellites. I'll point at you. We've got a Mexican standoff. No, look. There was a Chinese satellite that was steered into a US satellite. Well, look, that happens all the time. Yeah, it was an accident. It was an accident. There are no accidents, he says. Yeah. Look. The thing is this, right? Dave is right in bringing it all up, because this raises a whole bunch of very interesting questions. Well, number one, as he said, well, that might mean that Donald Trump is not actually read in, right? Which is not surprising. Very few presidents ever are, because there's like 5 or 6 classifications of secrecy above the level of POTUS.
He only got one of the briefcases, not the second one.
That's right. And to be honest with you, I mean, I have to be. Would you entrust all your national secrets to a person that's going to be there? No.
I'm sorry. Just I didn't even get to the end of the sentence, and already I've just gone, oh, probably not. Right?
No, but you wouldn't. I mean, I'm not talking about Donald Trump specifically. I'm talking to anybody who is sworn in as president. Chances are that because you're only there for 8 years tops.
Yeah.
That you wouldn't. I think the last president that was fully read in was probably George Bush Sr., because he was director of the CIA. He
was already CIA director, that's right. Yeah. And before then, Eisenhower would have been fully aware of what was going on.
Completely agree. Eisenhower would have been read in. Kennedy would have probably gotten suspicious because he was a smart cookie, but he probably wasn't read in either, which is, led to a whole bunch of unpleasantness there. But okay, so we have a whole bunch of questions then that are arising. So let's say that Donald Trump starts this thing and we have the Space Force, which is going to be a real thing. It'll happen. But then there might be evidence that there's this another Space Force here already. What? And they're like 1,000 years ahead of us, technology-wise. But look, there are a lot of interesting questions that are coming out of this, and none of them are easily answered, right? I mean, we do know we do know that some event is being prepared for, whatever the event might be. There's an event most likely coming our way. Okay, that's something that we can be pretty sure of. What the event looks like, what shape it takes, I really don't know. I mean, it could be any number of things. It will include, or it will involve large numbers of casualties. I think. I think there will be some natural catastrophes involved at some point. There will be shortages. There will be disquiet. There might even be riots. Look, there are many things that are coming our way, and I think it wasn't Reagan. I can't remember which president said, but the next threat we're going to face from outer space, after terrorism threat is over and the Soviet threat is over, the next threat will be from outer space. Now, is this a red herring? Maybe, but maybe not. Again, it goes in today's show as well, Dave. I mean, we're going to talk about this a little bit later on. We're going to talk about the Ataharsis, but I honestly believe this, that we as a species have probably been interfered with. We have been in space, or some version of us has been in space and probably still is there. I believe that we are active as far as visitors are concerned, and I don't think they're visitors, because visitor would imply they're not from here. I think the vast majority of encounters that we have are with beings that actually are from here and have been here for a very, very long time indeed. And we are completely ignorant of the true nature of reality. We're completely ignorant of the true state of our planet, to the point where, I mean, people would probably just point and laugh at us. They go, "Oh, you don't know what's going on." I mean, think about it, Dave. We're living on the surface of a planet which is bombarded with solar radiation, right? Mm-hmm. If you were half smart, now you wouldn't live on the surface of a planet. But whatever. Here we are. We're living on the surface. I reckon the civilizations that have been here for a long, long time are somewhere inside the Earth. I'm not saying the Earth is hollow completely. I'm not saying the Earth is a Dyson sphere. Could it be? Well, probably not. But I do believe that there are vast underground tracts. And I do know that civilizations have dug into the Earth. And I also know that some of our contemporaries believe they survived the last cataclysm underground. So we know they must have come from somewhere. And I also know that the Nazis built massive, or tried to build a massive underground installation. And we also hear about all these others, fabled cities, Shambhala and Shangri-La and so forth, that are purportedly around the Earth or in the Earth, as well as the Moon, which we think may very well be, maybe not a Dyson sphere, but certainly a hollow. So the point I'm trying to make is, I don't think that any of this is terribly new news, Dave. I think we have been co-inhabiting this particular planet for a very long time.
I don't disagree with you. My three questions are: do we need to be protected from something in space? Because there's already Project Solar Warden, which is meant to be protecting us already. So if he's not been read in, then he may not know, and he's quite the knee-jerk reaction guy, and they're going to play him for everything they can, right? All of the advisors. So now if they're advertising this to him, look, hey, now's a great time. Most people believe in UFOs. Let's make a space force. Awesome. And the moment he announced that, the first thing I thought was air superiority, won World War II. Right? There was a tipping point because the Luftwaffe and their radar was really winning the battle until they were outnumbered, under-resourced, and but they could actually focus in on the planes and while they were flying, right? So there was airborne radar. Great stuff. So owning space is really what you would want in the next time something happens, if that's what is currently going on. Is this the tip of the iceberg? Is it actually militarily just an advantage to do it? Yeah, from an earthbound perspective, skip the alien topic. Right? Is it just to overwhelm China? Is it just to see that their assets in space are solid? Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Is that what that is? Is it as simple as that? Or really, is this thing bigger than we can possibly imagine? Are they finally letting the cat out of the bag and announcing a space force so that they can dominate space, but pointed outwards, like Mackie said, right? But is this the beginning, maybe, of the fake alien invasion? You know, they announce the Space Force, they start to put assets in space, or they announce that they have, and they already had them there. Imagine you turn up at like a space McDonald's, right? On a military base in space, because you've been drafted, and it's got, you know, served so many people, and which would be impossible, like, you know, 2 trillion people or something. Right? You won't? No, that's all the space visitors we've been having for the last 50. Oh, I mean, what year was that? It was meant to be 18, July 18, June 18. We opened this up, right? Look, and I thought the aliens were already here anyway. So maybe this is a new species on their way. Maybe an uglier, more aggressive species is on their way. Maybe that's what they all heard. Maybe that's where he's getting his information from. That's maybe how they presented it to... Because I always think about how they presented it to him so he could make the decision, because that's all they've done. So like my mother used to do to my father, she'd put a really... Like if she wanted to go on holidays, for instance, right? So she would put 3 different brochures on the coffee table, and one of them would be the shittiest destination you've never wanted to go to. The other one would be so expensive, there's no chance in the world that my dad would say yes. And then the middle one was the one she wanted, right? And then he would go, oh, I think this would be great, this place. And he'd choose the middle one every time. Awesome, right? Now, I don't know if he probably already knew. And maybe she knew that, you know, maybe she only thought she was doing the job, but maybe he already knew what was going to happen and he was going to choose the right one anyway. But it made her happy, and it was just a game they played. But maybe that's what happened to this thing, right? Mm-hmm. They've gone, well, we see, sir, we can just shoot them in the sky when they're invading, or we can shoot them from space with conventional weapons, or we could just go the whole thing, right? Let's go the whole thing. See, we'll have space weapons. I don't even know what they are, but, you know, they're going to love them. And
sharks with laser beams on their heads. Space sharks with laser. Sharknado with lasers.
We can do that, sir. Yes. All right. So let's do that. But look, it's just from 2 words, Space Force, and I could talk a lot more at this, but anyway, I won't. I wanted to say that the earthquakes at Kilauea have gone up yet again, and I did send Mackie a graph that I'd made.
That's right.
Which shows it at 4,500 now in the last week, and it's still steadily rising from the original 1,320 back in May to around about just say 2,200 at the beginning of June. Mm-hmm. And now at the beginning of July, it's quadrupled and is now 4,500 in the last week. Now, if you're on the flanks of a volcano and it starts an endless cycle of earthquakes, do you stay? No. What's probably likely going to happen, right? It's probably going to go off. Something's going to happen. It's building to something. Now, it's not tapered off. It hasn't leveled off. It's not on its way down. It's still increasing the quantity of earthquakes. So I don't think we've seen the end of this thing yet.
No, I agree. I think and maybe this is one of the things, because now we've seen activity elsewhere. There's this
Madagascar volcanoes going off.
Yeah, there was disruption to air travel in Indonesia because a volcano on Bali is spewing up ash, which is of course interfering with the airline flight schedules. So there's this activity, there's earthquakes, there's seismic activity, there's volcanic activity. It's increasing, and I have to say, in recent times, the Kilauea activity is quite unprecedented. We haven't actually seen activity like this before. Yeah, sure, we've had volcanic eruptions, but the sheer concentration is astounding.
Mm-hmm.
So is this letting off steam? I hope it is, because obviously the other concern that we have is that Yellowstone, Old Faithful, could go off, which would be bad news for everybody. So is this something where steam is being let off, seismically speaking? I don't know. I hope it might be, because we cannot afford a Yellowstone eruption. That would be catastrophic.
Let's hope this is the little valve on the pressure cooker, just releasing just enough for it to stay stable. If it's not that, and worst case scenario, all of this rumbling, 4,000 earthquakes, right? And I hope the Helena slump doesn't slump. I hope that it doesn't slump. I don't want it to slump, but if it happened to slump, then it's or if it's right on the edge, I think this is going to tip the balance. Do you know what I mean? Do you know there's 2 miles of new ground that's been created? 2 miles. Yeah. That's a lot of ground, but it's not purely stable. Like, it's not all the way to the sea floor. That whatever 3 miles or whatever it is, right, deep. It's not that deep. It's only just sort of crusting out from it. So we're going to still see a collapse of that, but that won't cause the huge tsunami that the entire hillside of Kilauea collapsing into the ocean will do. Right? So just keep your ears out for that one. And I'm not trying to be a panic merchant. That's what I'm not trying to do. But just from an awareness point of view, like, I watch Dutch Sense YouTube channel, and he's now renowned for predictions, and he has a Sunday night prediction, and then in the week he'll show that he was right, and he's right. That's all I'm saying. He's right, and they come true, and he's now developed a whole thing that allows him to determine the depth and the magnitude of an earthquake coming because of the others. The whole thing is completely active. The whole Earth is this rattling away and doing its things, and he's able to pretty closely, within a couple of 100 miles, pick the next quake. So I've been watching him now for a couple of years, and he's only getting better. The big problem here is all of these earthquakes and all the volcanoes now, even a couple of volcanoes, Meki, that one of them hasn't erupted in 1,000 years.
Yes.
Yeah. So we're seeing. I've never seen the planet this darned active, to be honest with you, and that's why I've got my eyes peeled watching this, and I don't want to take my eyes off it for a second. I don't want to be without my mobile phone for a second. I certainly want to keep on top of what's going on, and if we see California, the big Hawaii, yes, Hawaii. If we heard there was a tsunami in Hawaii, great. We've got the most amount of people covered by the most amount of time. But in the hour and a half it would take to get to, or thereabouts, to California coastline, we've got a lot more people to worry about. Now, in Australia, the whole of Australia is like even less than the population of California on its own. So thinking about that, right? That's a lot of people. And if only 440,000 people were to survive it, then that would be a tragedy. So let's try and keep our ears to the ground and find out what's going on.
Look, and that's all we can do. It is. I want to say one thing though. Recently, again, it's actually increasing in frequency now. Is the an amount of TV shows, books, movies that are dealing with the end of well, everything as we know it. Like I said, and I said it before, the most popular TV show in the United States, apart from Game of Thrones, is The Walking Dead, which is an apocalyptic version of Us, where the dead have come to life, and the few humans that are surviving are fighting for their lives, and well, I guess for the return of some semblance of civilization. So the problem is that the art is tuning in to this zeitgeist, I guess the spirit of the times that we have, which is very doomsy and gloomsy. Interestingly, because this is 2018. If this were the year 2000 or the year 1999, I'll go, yeah, look, I mean, it makes sense. It's the millennial, angst. It's all kinds, of crazy things. But it's not, Dave. It's not even 2012. I mean, that came and went after all those Bucktoons. Bucktoon.
I've got a loyalty card, Nicky. The end of the world loyalty card. I get one free soon.
every doomsday I get a stamp. And none of it has come about. Now, I still believe that the hypothesis holds a potential glimpse into what is happening here, which is the number 7.76 billion. I just so happen to have the show notes open for show number 300, and I just glanced through it before this because I'm actually looking to put it into some kind of format we can publish. But more on that later. And I read through it before the show. It makes sense. In fact, the number we came up with, there are two numbers. One is 7,778,742,049, which we will reach in 2020, or 7,778,578,647 point something. Again, 2020. Now that we use different calculations, but essentially we used the Fibonacci sequence to come up with these numbers. And interestingly enough, it's the 50th generation from assuming a zero start, for the human race at some point. But it's the 50th. The 50th Fibonacci generation. So each Fibonacci number is of course in addition of the previous two, right? So it took 50 to get to 7 billion.
So we're at 7.63 billion right now.
Yeah, so that's pretty close.
Yeah, I think we're going to hit it this year.
That would be not good, but again, we're not doomsday merchants, but there are many indications that are pointing towards something in the near future, right? I'm not going to give you a date. I'm not going to say this is what it is because that's just silly. Mm-hmm. Nobody can know for sure. What we do know is that there are a number of different things on the way, and there's a lot of other things that play into this as well. As a civilization, we are really losing it. And I'm talking about Western civilization at large here, right? We are really starting to lose it. We've lost our way. I mean, completely. We have no moral compass. Look, I'm not an angel. Okay, I'm not a choir boy by any stretch of the imagination. But there's some things that you just don't do. There's some things that you know inherently, deep inside your bones, they're wrong. You just know it, right? We spoke about this last time. I don't want to rehash it, but that seems to be going out the window.
Well,
right?
I mean, Meki, if you're the US, you can just disregard the Human Rights Treaty or the Weapons in Space Treaty.
Yeah, all that is going out the window. But even on a more personal level, I mean, our children. We can. I mean, if you live in the States and Australia as well, and some countries in Europe, you can no longer celebrate Christmas and call it that. Now, am I a religious person? No. That'd be a lie. If anybody said I was religious, that'd be a complete lie. But there's certain traditions I hold dear, because they are traditions. I grew up with them. They make me feel, all warm and fuzzy. And Christmas is one of them. And there's nothing wrong with the Judeo-Christian code of ethics. It's very similar to other codes of ethics. You shouldn't kill. Makes sense. You shouldn't steal. Okay, I can go with it. You shouldn't cheat. All right. You shouldn't bear false witness, against your neighbor. Hey, that works for me. It's not you shouldn't lie. That's wrong. It's actually you shouldn't bear false witness, but people simplify things, right? So all these ethical foundations, these moral guideposts, they're useful living together, right? And trust me, the other civilizations, other religions, other ethnic backgrounds, and they're all very similar. So, but that's disappearing. It's being replaced with pop culture and the Kardashians. Oh, let's worship at the altar of the Kardashian. Let's build all the Prada bags, and let's buy all the Prada bags. Let's build them first, then we buy them. all the Prada and the Fendi and the whatevers.
We've got the music. It's the top of the hour break. Yeah.
All right, don't go away, guys. Donate if you can. This is Listener Fun and Radio. Please support us.
I can probably suggest we're back on air again. And this is Dave and Mecky's Shiny Side Out on freedomslips.com. Mecky, you back?
I'm here, my friend. So you think we're back? Okay, good.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, cool. Okay, so thank you very much for joining us again to Dave and Mecky's Shiny Side Out. Show number 329. That's what I thought. 920 and 300. The igigi. We're going to talk about the igigi. We've spoken about the igigi for the last few shows. We did talk about the space program just a little bit earlier, and actually, it all sort of connects. It comes right into this here with us. So it makes sense to talk about it in the present context as well. And I want to say this about the Anunnaki. We're going back to primary sources, and this is what research is all about. I just need to set this for a second. The research is about getting as close to the truth as you can, right? So you got primary sources, secondary, tertiary sources. A primary source is somebody who was there, right? Or a text that was written at the time, or any fragment, or even a physical piece of archaeology.
It's a good segue, Mecky, to what I'm going to bring up after you mention this. So go ahead.
Beautiful, fantastic. So we're looking, and in fact have looked at the translations, the official translations of the Gilgamesh epic for one. Atrahasis, there are actually a number of tablets, but we're focusing here on tablet 11, and again, you can actually look at those yourselves. And this is as close to the bone as we have been able to get without actually speaking to someone from the time, Dave.
Yes, completely. So I want to remind you, I'd like to remind the audience how poorly something can be translated.
Oh yes, thank you. Let's do that. I love that.
Absolutely. Now, I did send you a copy of this, Becky. So
I got it.
Yep. I'll read the line, and then you'll read the English version of a translation. So
and let's just quickly say though. So Dave is going to read the line, but there are 1, 2, 3, 4. There are 5 hops in between. And the hops of translation that Dave has made are, so it goes from English into the Amharic, the ancient language of I guess, the Jesus Christ, into Hebrew, into Greek, into Latin, and then into German. And then again, the last bit is again translated into English. But Dave, so what was the first English text that you put down?
It was a song we all are familiar with, and it's Born in the USA. You know the song. Everyone knows the song, right? So the song I chose intentionally because we know its meaning, and we know what each line means currently today in the context of being alive in the 20th and the 21st century. To us, it makes sense because we've got the context of the way that the sentence has been made to express an emotion. And the emotion isn't described, it's a feeling borne out by our understanding of the phrase. I hope that makes sense. It'll make sense in a minute. So the first line is born in a dead man's town.
The translation, in the end, born in the city died. That's after 5 hops.
After 5 hops. So it's the context of it is lost because born in Dead Man's Town means you're born in a town where there isn't much hope of anything. Yeah? The next line is, the first kick I took was when I hit the ground.
Which comes out after you do all that. This is the first leg.
Yeah. Okay. So I don't quite understand how I can work with that text at the end, but we'll keep going. End up like a dog that's been beat too much.
Which comes to, for example, in a piece of wood, a dog is prevented.
Okay. And that's true. That's what it says. And then, till you spend half your life just covering up.
Which is then again translated to, do not just spend half of your life. Now I know the last hop is German, and that is pretty close to the final version. I also understand Latin. The Latin is again there's some context, I guess is the best word, that is lost in translation from Latin to German. But from German to English, it's pretty close. Now, I think where most of it is getting lost is in the Amharic and the Hebrew, and then in the ancient Greek as well. So there are 3 hops in there, where a lot of the context, I think, is completely goes out the window. I mean, it's astounding to see it, and I thank you, Dave, for putting it together.
I did do the entire song, and
I know.
I am going to post this on our website, right? I will get to that, and I'll post it on the website so that when someone's using any, in this example, this is the path that the Bible took, and it started as text and was translated. Now, and there's been some arguments pro and con this method of translation. However, as Mackie said, the Latin to German to English was pretty close.
Mm-hmm.
Right? The way you would describe something, and if you have monks working feverishly their entire life trying to decipher what born in a dead man's town means, and then writing that so that it could be, reread and understood without emotion.
Yeah.
Is that what is happening here with the translation programs that are doing this? The way that they're translated, not just word for word, because word for word is meaningless.
Exactly.
So,
but Dave, this is important. So let's just. I wanna focus on a couple of things here. One, you're completely correct. It is completely meaningless translating it word for word, because if you translate it word for word, the word that you're trying to translate, you might not even be able to conceptualize. Like there's something here. I wanna just share this with you. The third stanza was, got in a little hometown jam, so they put a rifle in my hand, sent me off to a foreign land to go and kill the yellow man. That's the third stanza here. So that translates to, this is a small town and they gave me a gun. Tell me the country, go to a blacksmith. Now, the context is completely lost, because obviously it's referring to Vietnam here, right? The Vietnam War, but it can't. And so the yellow man has somehow turned into a blacksmith, right? It probably was a yellow man. Okay, there's no word for yellow maybe, and so it becomes color. And maybe instead of color it becomes shade, and from shade it turns to black, and from blacksmith, or black man, maybe it goes to blacksmith, or something like that. And all of a sudden you've got a blacksmith, right? A schmied. So it's very strange. So if you're looking at things that happened a long time ago, and maybe they're written down a little bit after the fact, like flying machines, or spacecraft, or visitors, or whatever it might be, it doesn't matter. Even complex scientific.
Wheels within wheels.
Wheels within wheels. Perfect. Like it's what Ezekiel told us, and their eyes all around it. They're wheels within wheels. What does that mean? Well, Joseph Blumrick, a NASA engineer, actually looked at Ezekiel's description of this, I guess, manifestation of God, this flying machine, and got a patent. on like a shuttlecraft sort. No, it's not quite a helicopter, but certainly something of the kind. So you have no concept. So you're writing it down. So nonetheless, you're writing it down. There you are. But even if you do have the scientific knowledge and you're writing it down, the next person that writes it down or translates it might not. And they will try to capture as much of the text that they have received as possible. And we can see this. So let me give a simple example. So I'm pretty sure that at least as far as we know, the original flood story came down to us from the Sumerians. I have no doubt about that. Atrahasis, and in fact the Sumerian Noah was Utna Pishtam. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, it means that the story that predates the Bible clearly, or the Old Testament, is probably closer to the truth than the one that was later captured when they started writing down the Old Testament. And there are some very interesting components of that story. Like, one of the gods, this wasn't a god, this was a council of gods, the Anunnaki, right? Tried to save humanity, while the other ones decided, no, we should do away with them, right? And so he tried to help Utnapishtim, and build this ark and do all these wonderful things. And there's a lot more context to it, even around the creation of humans as we know them, Homo sapiens sapiens. There's a lot more context. I mean, it makes a lot more sense, in fact, than anything in the Old Testament. So here are the gods, the Anunnaki, and they've got the other gods, the igigi, which are smaller gods for all intents and purposes, like smaller as in, they're not as high up in the hierarchy, and they're doing all the work. And we don't want to do all the work. And the Anunnaki, oh man, sorry about that. We didn't realize. We were asleep at the tiller. I mean, look at us. You're doing all the hard work. We're having, the corporate lunches and, and all that. But we completely forgot about you.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah.
So sorry. And then the detail which we shared with you last week of creating these human beings in an artificial womb after, I think it was 10 months gestational. I don't want to lie here, but there was some gestational period. And here the black-headed ones, which is us, the black-headed ones, created to do the work that the igigi no longer wanted to do. But not only that, the igigi then look at us and go, hey, they're pretty good looking, those ones. Let's have a couple of dates and see where it takes us. and so they do, right? And all of a sudden you have this legend of the sons of God sleeping with the daughters of man, creating this race of giants, which are the heroes of old, blah blah blah. It's in the Bible, but distorted. It's distorted. It's looked at from the point of view of a monotheistic, patriarchic society. Yeah. So they have to change it. There's only one God, so it can't be like a bunch of gods. It's only the one God, right? And all these sons of God, well, I don't know how we explain that, but they're called sons of God now. There you go. The watchers, the igigi, whatever. So a lot of the context, a lot of the meaning is missed because some of it just doesn't make any sense. And this is what Dave has illustrated here with the Bruce Springsteen song is that with our translations, I just say, so what Dave did, he took the English and translated it into Amharic. Okay, and from there it went into Hebrew, Greek, Latin, German, and English, which is pretty much the route the Bible took. Yeah. And in fact, German was the first modern language, if you will, that the Bible was translated into by Martin Luther some 400 years ago. And then there's King James Bible, which was almost, I think, contemporary or came soon after, and it was English then. So it's really, I think, in my mind, very clear what happened, Dave. When we look at the original texts, there's a lot more meat in there. And if we look at it from our view of our knowledge today, our scientific understanding of the world, I mean, artificial insemination and IV and having even I guess an artificial womb, as it were, are no longer outlandish things. We understand them. We make them. We can do that, right? We talk about cloning, right? We talk about the genome, decoding our genetic information. To us, yeah, is it far-fetched? No, it's not at all. to someone trying saying this 100 years ago, 1,000 years ago, it's all just magic. It makes no sense at all. This is gonna get me a lot of haters, Dave. So I'm gonna say, well, look, let's be very clear. The virgin birth. Now, there are a number of things around this here, but I want to focus just on the virgin birth aspect. Is that possible today? Absolutely, 100%. Any woman can go into an IVF clinic.
That's right.
And become artificially inseminated, and retain her virginity if the right care is taken. So that is not amazing. So no longer is the active participation of a man required. In fact, we've now gotten to the point, my friend, where we need neither man nor woman to participate at all in any of this. So we can now create a child that has neither father nor mother.
It seems to take the fun out of it. Maybe that's some of the things that have been said about how we screw up our race from those who have been, shown. They described that we made a mistake, and they're coming back in the past to grab some DNA.
And you know what? I would not be astounded. I wouldn't be at all surprised if this wasn't the truth. I mean, look, again, is time travel possible? Yes. Do we care when it's going to be invented? Not at all. As soon as it is, it doesn't matter anymore. But I think our existence is much more mysterious than that, and I think we need to pay a lot more attention to to quantum physics and the many worlds theory as well. But look, that's another show, another day.
But Mac, you talked about the Atrahasis at the beginning of this piece.
Correct.
Look, a few general histories can be attributed to the Mesopotamian Atrahasis by ancient sources. These should generally be considered mythology, but they do give an insight into the possible origins of the character. The Epic of Gilgamesh, which we're all familiar with, labels Atrahasis as the son of Ubara-Tutu, king of Shuruppak, on tablet 11. Gilgamesh spoke to Utnapishtim, Atrahasis, the faraway, O man of Shuruppak, son of Ubara-Tutu. The instructions of Shuruppak instead labels Atrahasis under the name, what's that name? Ziusudra.
Ziusudra, that's it, yeah.
As the son of Eponymous Shuruppak, who himself is labelled as the son of Ubara-Tutu. At this point, we are left with two possible fathers, Ubara-Tutu or Shuruppak. Many available tablets comprising the Sumerian kings lists support the Epic of Gilgamesh by omitting the ruler of Shuruppak. These lists imply... Go ahead, Mickey.
No, go.
These lists imply an immediate flood after or during the rule of Ubara-Tutu. These lists also make no mention of Atrahasis under any name. However, WB62 lists a different and rather interesting chronology. Here, Atrahasis is listed as the ruler of Shuruppak, and Guddug, priest, preceded by his father Shuruppak, who is in turn preceded by his father Ubara-Tutu. WB62 would therefore lend support to the instructions of Shuruppak, and is particular in that it mentions both Shuruppak and Atrahasis. In any event, it seems that Atrahasis was of royal blood, whether he himself ruled and in what way this would affect the chronology is debatable.
Look, and there are a couple of things here I just wanted to bring in. So Atrahasis is in fact Utnapishtim, the Sumerian Noah. Okay, so now it's being debated here whether or not, what is his provenance? Was he part of the ruling elite? Now, if one of the Anunnaki took an interest in him, then we can be pretty safe in assuming that he indeed was a man of some importance, and so was his family. But it's also referring here to the Sumerian king lists, and this is very important sidebar here. The Sumerian king list is very extensive. It includes both historical kings, like the kings we completely have evidence for, and it goes from the first dynasty of Kish right down to the dynasty of Isin. But what it also has is the list of the antediluvian rulers, the rulers before the flood. And this is where it gets really, really interesting. So before the flood, there were a totality of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 rulers who ruled an average of 28,000 years each. 28,000 years. Now, that's crazy, Matthew. It's just nonsense. As soon as I say the number, everybody goes, that's just craziness. Again, I ask you, please take a step back and look at the mayfly, which lives a day. And for any serious discussion amongst the mayfly intelligentsia, as they sit together, smoking, some weed. Oh man, nobody could live that long. Oh yeah, sure they can. Our lifespans would be completely nonsensical. Yeah, they've told us just how many years.
3,600 years to them.
Right? That's just insane, right? Well, it isn't. It isn't, because it's a reality, and different things have different lifespans. And the unfortunate thing, Dave, is that we are completely blinded by our human condition. We think we are the yardstick for everything. No, we're not. We're not the yardstick for everything. We just happen to be here, and we're here for a while. I mean, again, I will tell you, this is again from the hypothesis. Okay, here we go, actually. The average lifespan here we go. In 1786 was 24 years. 1786, 24 years. In 1886, it doubled to 48 years. In the year 2000, right, we could expect to live to about 76 years. Yeah? And right now, this is coming from Dr. Ronald Klutz of the American Academy for Anti-Aging. We're looking at lifespans for the baby boomers and the generation after the baby boomers of 120 to 150 years of age. It's not going to stop there. It's not. And look, we all know why, and the telomeres and telomerase. I'm not going to go into it yet again. That's again another show. But the king lists, again, we have to go back to the original things. So that everybody thinks that's just nonsense, makes no sense. Then there's a whole bunch of other rulers in the dynasty of Kish. Right, and even in the dynasty of Uruk, up to probably maybe even Gilgamesh, where people ruled for 1,000 years, 800 years, 900 years, and people think, yeah, that's clearly crazy as well. But then the ruling, this is about the third millennium before Christ, so 5,000 years ago. Then we get lifespans of about 100 years. Rulings, or 15 years or 36 years, and all of a sudden, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, okay, I dig it. That I understand how that could be. But then you've got anomalies again in the second dynasty of Kish, where people ruled for 200 years and 360 years and 360 years and 290 years and 180 years, and then people say, oh no, they just made a mistake counting, but they didn't make a mistake counting when they only talk about 8 years. Or 7 years. They only make a mistake when it's longer. So why don't we just take it at face value for a second here? They went to the
You remember they didn't rule their entire life, right? They ruled when they got to the ruling age. Bingo. And then ruled. It doesn't mean that they only lived for 700 years. They only ruled for 700 years.
Look, and that's exactly right. And that's really key to remember. Not only that, these people went to the trouble of, and this is quite an impressive stone monument, by the way. The stone tablet inscribed with the Sumerian king list. It's actually, they took the trouble to inscribe it in stone. It's not easy. It takes a bit of effort, right? So I'm just saying. No, look,
there was counting. Yeah,
That was
chiseling.
it. Now shall be 5.
Yeah, but yeah, I think Meki is definitely right here, and that is, we can't dismiss the ages that they talk about, the ages of the people, the length of time they ruled for. The Mayfly is a great example. Our own pets are a tremendous example. We live 7 times longer than them. So from their life, unless if you haven't got children, they don't even know they're older. And they go all the way to old age and pass away. Yeah, from being a puppy, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we know this. We know there's differences. Let's just face it. Let's accept that they did rule for these lengths of time, and that it is the was it alluvial, anti-alluvial,
Antediluvian, yeah. Before the flood.
diluvial. Yeah. So before the flood, people lived for a lot longer. We know the story behind it. We know why we don't live that long anymore, and it completely makes sense. Meki, just go on.
Yeah, look. So there's now we're getting to the literary inheritance. This is where it's interesting. The Epic of Atrahasis provides additional information on the flood and flood hero that is omitted in the Gilgamesh 11 tablet and other versions of the ancient Near East flood story. According to Atrahasis 3, section 240 to 47, the flood hero was at a banquet when the storm and flood began. He invited his people, fragment, to a banquet, fragment. He sent his family on board. They ate and they drank, but he, Atrahasis, was in and out. He could not sit, could not crouch, for his heart was broken, and he was vomiting gall. Gall, I should say. Now, before I go on, if you had just been told that your world is about to end, but go and save who you can, you probably wouldn't. You probably would not, be very calm about it. you probably would be in a state of distress, and chances are he might, be so upset that he would throw up, right? Now, to continue, the flood story in the standard edition of the Epic of Gilgamesh, chapter or tablet 11, may have been paraphrased or copied verbatim from a no longer existing intermediate version of the Epic of Atrahasis. But editorial changes were made, some of which had long-term consequences. The sentence quoted above from Atrahasis 3, section 4, lines 6 to 7, like dragonflies they have filled the river, was changed in Gilgamesh 11, line 1, 2, 3, to like the spawn of fishes they fill the sea. However, right, it gives it a very different context, like Dave has just shown with his translation into different languages. So it's like dragonflies, they have filled the river. It's not like the spawn of fishes, they filled the sea. That's a very different thing. It's similar in intent, but it's not the same. Other editorial changes were made to the Atrahasis text as well. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, anthropomorphic descriptions of the gods are weakened. Let me say this again. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, anthropomorphic descriptions of the gods are weakened, so they are less human-like. For example, in Atrahasis 3, 30 to 31, the Anunnaki, the senior gods, as we know them now, right? Those were sitting in thirst and hunger, was changed in Gilgamesh 11, 113, to the gods feared the deluge. They didn't fear the deluge, they were sitting there, hungry and thirsty. The question is why, right? Sentences in Atrahasis 3, 4 were omitted in Gilgamesh. For example, she was surfeited with grief and thirsted for beer. And from hunger, they were suffering cramp. Okay? So, what this was meant to highlight here, that even in the transfer of information from the poem or the Epic of Atrahasis to the Epic of Gilgamesh, which in time they were, I'm not saying they're contemporary, but they're not that far apart in time, right? There were changes made, there were edits made, the meanings were changed. Okay? So we think now Atrahasis contains the oldest flood myth story that we know of.
Meki, I want to point something out. So the like dragonflies have filled the river, and like the spawn of fishes, they fill the sea. Wait a minute. So dragonflies put a larvae into the river.
That's correct.
But I mean, they're not filling the river; they're using the river and procreating, and it becomes the melting pot, so to speak, or their womb.
Yep.
For the gestation period, right? Of the nymph.
That's right. Yep.
So, I like the spawn of fishes. They feel it's similar.
Not the same.
Similar, but it's not the same. And dragonflies don't live in the medium.
That's correct.
It's another difference. So dragonflies live in the air and use the sea. So I get that. I really get that then. That seems to make more sense, that the differentiation there is so extreme.
I know, right? I mean, some of the original intent is still there, but certainly not all of it. You're right.
Mm-hmm.
All fish live in the sea all the time. But for dragonflies, the river is just an intermediate stage. For example, I mean, if you want to be technical about it, right? So yeah. So is this maybe more meaningful in the context of people that are using the Earth for certain purposes? I don't know. I'm just speculating here. But you're right. So then, Dave, that brings us to the question that we've been asking now for a number of weeks. Who, in fact, were the igigi?
Yeah, that question came up a lot when we were looking into this. So, if you have been studying the ancient astronauts, they are likely a number of terms you have become familiar with: the Anunnaki, the Nephilim, and the reptilians. But one word which you may not be as familiar with is the igigi, sometimes also spelled igigu. This term doesn't crop up a whole lot in Sumerian and Babylonian lore, but where it does, it has fascinating implications. So, simply put, oh, hang on, Mecca, you take this. I've got to look after our pet. One sec.
Not a problem. So who or what were these igigi? Simply put, the igigi seem to have been a lower rank of gods. They were a servant class which existed before human beings were created, as we've learned. Occasionally, the term is used synonymously with Anunnaki, but this seems to be inappropriate. Consider the following passage taken from the myth of Atrahasis, an Akkadian creation myth and flood story, well, it's Sumerian. When the gods, manlike, bore the labor, carried the load, the gods' load was great. The toil grievous, the trouble excessive. The great Ananaku, the seven, were making the Igigu undertake the toil. So clearly, the Igigu or the Igigi were made to do all the work. This passage definitely denotes the Igigi as separate from the Anunnaki, and certainly a lower caste of beings. What is the context of the passage above? The Igigi were being forced to take a watercourse. They got tired of it, so they revolted against Enlil, one of the head Anunnaki. They burned their tools and surrounded Enlil's estate. When the Anunnaki realized that the Igigi are not going to give up the strike, and that's what it was, a strike, they decided it's time for a new solution to their labor problem. And that solution is, yes, it is the creation of human beings. Now, this brings us to Enki, Enlil, and the creation of human beings. At this point, if you're not all too familiar with the Mesopotamian mythology, you probably have a few questions. I mean, who was Enlil? You know, why was all this labor needed? Where does humanity fit into the picture? Fair questions all. To summarize briefly, the Anunnaki pantheon begins with Anu, the great father of the sky, also An for short. Anu was originally the supreme ruler of the Mesopotamian gods. He did have parents, two primordial gods named Kishar and Ansha, but they don't have much story time for this particular story. Anu's consorts were Ki, the Earth Mother, and Antu, the Great Mother of the Sky. Dave?
He bore children by both of them. Anu and Ki's son was Enlil, Lord of the air and earth, guardian of the tablets of destinies, well, for a while anyway. They also had a daughter, Nin Kursag, Lady of the Mountain. Anu and Antu's son was Enki, Lord of the Earth and Waters, also called Ea. This made Enki and Enlil half-brothers. Now, you might think that that being a god is easy, but apparently maintaining creation takes a lot of work. That or gods are just really lazy. Because they live so long, maybe. There's a joke. So, you know how children run really fast and adults walk really slow. And my daughter said, "Dad, why do you walk so slow?" I said, "Well, you know, when you get old, you're just disappointed by a lot of things, and I'm just trying to stretch out the time between my disappointments." All right, so either way, the Anunnaki didn't want to do it. So they saddled the lesser gods, the igigi, with all of that toil. After the igigi went on strike, because they didn't want to do it either, it's like digging latrines in the military, the pantheon naturally fell into some pretty heated conflict and disarray. In a bid to gain power, Enlil offered to solve the problem if, in turn, the gods would name him their supreme ruler. Well, bugging. I'll do it only if you give me a pay rise. At this point, Enki, Enlil's half-brother, was fast asleep. He must have been quite the heavy sleeper. Enlil spoke to Enki's mother, Antu, who was able to speak Enki in his sleep. There's another place, Meki, you can...
I know.
Yeah, right? So she probably went to sleep as well and then met him in his sleep. On Enlil's suggestion, she told him the following: "O my son, arise thy bed from thy slumber, work what is wise, fashion servants for the gods, may they produce their bread." Sounds like mana. Enki then woke up and had a brilliant idea, implanted in his head, of course, by Enlil. He was going to create a new race of slaves.
Hooray!
Hooray! And depicted in our show notes is the stature comparison between humans and the Anunnaki. Gathering clay and mixing it with the blood of the slaughtered god Kingu, Enki crafted human beings. They replaced the igigi as the new slaves working for the Anunnaki. Human beings are noisy creatures, however, and Enlil soon tired of them. Really? That sort of made sense, right? He decided to kill them all with the flood of legend, the same that shows up in the Bible in the Epic of Gilgamesh. Enki wasn't a fan of this idea, so he warned a man named, go on. There you go. About what was coming, and told him to build an ark. He then loaded up with mating pairs of animals and boarded with his wife, another mating pair of animals. The flood destroyed all other life on Earth, but the waters eventually receded, and then he released the animals, and the planet was repopulated. Enlil, and I've got a comment after all this, but Enlil either was feeling guilty or he admired the fellow because he later made him and his wife immortal for doing the work. Now, it has to be said that everyone who was alive before the flood no longer inhabited Earth after the flood, despite surviving it. Only their offspring in some way was. Enlil so now you know the context of the story of humankind's creation and how and where the igigi fit into it. As you can see, their role, at least on paper, well, maybe clay, was minor. So Meki, we have a number of points in this story. So one was the sleeping thing, that they slept for a long time, but when you sleep, you wake up and you just go again, right?
And that is very similar to Odin's sleep, right? And some of the gods that are portrayed to sleep for a very long time, or aeons, in fact, right? Because let's think about this for a second. We are completely, well, not completely, but we're certainly affected by the day-night cycle of this particular planet. It's our home planet, and 12 hours dark, 12 hours light, more or less. Different times of guards and guides our sleep, right? Pretty much. It informs how we interact with the world. Now, if this were not your home planet, or if you came from an environment that didn't have daylight cycles, for example, right, or night cycles, then you would probably have a different kind of sleeping arrangement. And if you're very long lived, in fact, we look at sleep for various reasons, and there's actually no good evolutionary reason for sleep the way we do it. Be that as it may, hibernation is different, but sleep as we do it, completely pointless. So what does this mean then? So these Anunnaki, who for all intents and purposes seem to have lived for a very long time, indeed tens, potentially even hundreds of thousands of years, would probably have different needs of sleep. There's their physiology, the constitution would be different, I would assume. They would eat different things, and so they would sleep differently. And they might be awake for 1,000 years, right? And they might sleep for 500, or something like that. I mean, maybe that's what they need for their cellular regeneration. I don't know, but clearly, all of these stories we had. This is now from ancient Sumer, but the same is true for Odin and other godheads from other cultures, right? So that's the first point, Dave. You're right. It's odd. Not only that, it seems that there seems to be a possibility to contact us or communicate during the sleep time. And here it seems like that Enki was not tricked, but certainly influenced in his sleep, hypnotically something, by his brother Enlil. He planted an idea in his head through his mother.
I still think that's entirely possible.
Oh, of course it is.
Yeah.
Of course it is. I mean, that's like a good idea. Yes, it's a good idea. Right? Look, the best way to convince someone.
But we also have the story of Noah. Just changed. The name's changed, but the actual, making an ark and filling up with animals, mating pairs, that's in there. That's in his story. And just the guy's name's different. Well,
yes, somewhat. I mean, Utnapishtim, you still have all the major, I guess, the sounds that make up Noah. Utna, Pish, Na. I mean, Napish. Right? Over time, you probably simplified. Like I give you what do you think Jesus' real name is, for example? Right? It wasn't Jesus. That's the Roman version of the name. His name was probably Joshua or Yeshu or Yesh. Right? Jesus is just the Latinized form of the Hebrew name. And it's other names as well, in the same way. I mean, names change, for the most part. And Utnapishtim could very easily morph into Noah, right? So, again, I'm convinced that Noah is or the story of Noah is just a copy of the story of Utnapishtim.
But when we looked at the flood stories, that there was a whole bunch of things going together there, where some people said that the gods provided the boat or the craft to save the people, and it was metallic.
Yeah. So I think what we can say safely, Dave, is, and this was really the amazing thing about the flood stories. We can say two things. One, it seems to have been a global event, which is remembered differently. It's remembered differently and the same. So it's mainly the differences that make it plausible for me, because if it was all the same, you would say, oh yeah, okay, look, this is definitely a case of cross-cultural contamination. It's the same story, okay, done. But no, it's the differences in the stories that make it more believable. And we can also believe, or say here very clearly, that different people all over the world were saved differently, or survived by sheer luck. Some received more help than Utnapishtim. Some received no help whatsoever. Right? So it's a mixed bag. Of course, if the God, or what I perceive to be God, helps me, I'm going to write that down. I'm going to remember that.
Right? And likewise, if I received no help at all, right?
Yeah,
I'm going to write that down. Where was the God then? Yeah,
bingo. That's exactly right. And in fact, some of the flood stories don't mention the gods necessarily, but rather transgressions. They mention cannibalism. They mention overpopulation, things like that. You go, what?
Yeah, brothers and sisters sealed in a log by their parents.
Yeah,
with wax.
All kinds of 100%. It's a plethora of different stories. And again, the differences are what's important here.
The differences are actually what makes it the same story. Because if everyone had it verbatim, the same phrase, the same phrasing with the same words describing the same event, I would believe that was cultural contamination. I'd believe that was a story that was fabricated.
Yeah,
to describe
like we see it here.
Yeah.
In fact, the best example of cross-cultural contamination we can see here is the story of ancient Sumer leaking into the Old Testament. So the story of Atrahasis, which is who is actually Utnapishtim, being copied into the book of Genesis in the Bible, right? So it's it's a straight copy. Boom, there it is. Bing a bunga bonga, right? And Adam, the name Adam, Adamu.
Yeah, that's
Adamu,
right.
the first human beings created by the Anunnaki were called the Adamu.
That's right.
That's a coincidence. And then Adam is the first man. And then you go, well, if God created Adam, and don't forget, this was a patriarchal society with a monotheistic male God. So obviously he created Adam as a man. Oh, what about? Oh, well, that doesn't work out. I mean, you need a woman somewhere there. So we took Adam's rib, which is not in the original creation myth, because the Anunnaki created human beings, not a man, but a whole bunch of human beings, right, in an artificial womb. Oh no, because it's patriarchal and male dominated. The woman was created from one of Adam's ribs. Right.
Yeah, but so in the biblical version, she had 3 sons.
Yes, she did.
No daughters. I'll leave that with you to think about what happened next. How is the next generation derived? Right?
Spontaneous combustion. That's what happened.
That'll have to do. So, Meki, tell us about Marduk.
Yeah, Marduk, interesting character, really interesting character. In fact, the picture of Marduk is of this Sumerian Akkadian, I guess, deity with wings and a very finely manicured beard and a handbag and a pineal or pine cone, I should say, in his right hand, plus what seems to be a wristwatch. So the question is, what were the names of the igigi? So we don't know. Is the answer. But Marduk may very well have been one of the igigi. He was the patron god of Babylon. He was Enki's son. His mother was Damkina. He's known as the Avenger. And as Babylon rose to power in the historical world, so did Marduk rise to prominence among the gods, since he was the patron god of Babylon. Marduk's main significance lies in that rise to power. So here's a brief version of the story. At the top of the Anunnaki family tree, Tiamat, the dragon mother, and Apsu, her consort, had a falling out regarding the young gods they had created, which led to Tiamat murdering Apsu. Years later, her bitterness led her to take out her guilt and anger at his death on the young gods. Tiamat created 11 monsters to wage war against the gods. Marduk, like Enlil, made the deal with the gods to elevate him to supreme leader status if he can solve the problem and restore order. He was able to kill Tiamat in one-on-one combat, as well as her general, Kingu. You will recall that it was Kingu's blood which Enki then used to create humans. Yes, it all is connected. Kingu had the Tablet of Destinies, which conferred authority upon Marduk when he seized them. Now, there's some confusion among believers in the ancient astronaut hypothesis as to whether Marduk was an alien leader or a planet. So whether or not he was among the igigi in the extraterrestrial version of the story is debatable. It depends on whether he was a person or not. The historical evidence that Marduk may have been among the igigi comes from the Code of Hammurabi. This famous law code mentions that Marduk was elevated by the Anunnaki from the ranks of the igigi. Other gods that scholars have identified as possible members of the igigi clan are Ishtar, of Easter fame,
say that before, yeah.
Naramsit, Ninurta, Nuska, and Shamash. What it might mean to be both igigi and Anunnaki is not all that clear. But perhaps Anunnaki refers to a species, and igigi simply refers to a caste within that species. So say that Ishtar was both. Going by the extraterrestrial theory, this might mean that she was both a member of the reptilian race, the Anunnaki, and a servant caste within that race, the igigi. There appear to be very few references to the igigi in ancient texts, so it is difficult to research them. But there is a page, which we've included here in the show notes, a link at least to it, that contains some very good references, and we used it for our research. So guys, go ahead and check it out on your own time, right? How much time do we have? A few more moments. I think, Dave, you can probably share that. 5
minutes or so.
Yeah, I think you can share that igigi, one of the great Anunnaki mysteries, with us.
Awesome. Yeah, judging by the lack of igigi references in ancient texts, humanity must have had little or no direct contact with the previous servant caste. The igigi may or may not have been a class of Anunnaki, but whoever they were, whatever they were, they faded into the woodwork after human beings were created, because there's no mention of what happens. Did they return home to Nibiru? Did they simply ascend to the same class as their fellow Anunnaki now that a slave race has been created to fill their prior role? Why don't we know more about them? Was knowledge of the igigi concealed on purpose by the Anunnaki? If so, why? Perhaps the only thing we can say for sure about the igigi, aside from the fact that they were servants to the gods, is this: they raise more questions than we can currently answer. Perhaps the truth will be revealed when the Anunnaki return. Still a date that I'm waiting for. It's in my calendar, and they keep denying. They keep saying that they don't want to go to the meeting, Meki. I would love to have a meeting with the Anunnaki. That's absolutely right. We don't know what happened to them. There's no text. You know those... the previous people mentioned above, not Ishtar, but the other two people with TAR at the end. I was thinking to myself, maybe Ishtar was involved also, and voila, I was pretty right on that one. The question that was raised also about Tiamat is Sitchin had described Tiamat as being one of the two planets that collided, and the Earth resulted from that collision. So, was Tiamat Earth or the other planet that collided with Earth, the former Earth? Because that's also mentioned in the Sumerian texts about the creation of our actual Earth being involved in a collision. Now, it also mentions here something very interesting about Tiamat, and that was that it resulted in the killing of gods. Now, were those gods on that planet? Yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense that it's still a planet to me rather than a person. So, well, I think that the jury's not resolved that one yet for us.
Not quite, no, not quite. And look, it's an interesting story, and again, we have to understand, everybody, that this is the oldest written source we have for any of this. There's nothing that predates this that we are aware of that has been made available to the public. It is truly a glimpse into, I guess, a past 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 years ago. At least that's when it was written down. The stories themselves are clearly a lot older, especially if we believe the king lists and how long people did rule. Is it far-fetched? Is it completely insane to assume that any of this is a fact? No, it is not. It is not at all insane to assume that this might be possible, because we have discussed this at length. Right? We are unfortunately completely caught within the contexts of our own realities and our own lives. That's all we can see. That's all we understand. And we have taken ourselves to be the pinnacle of everything. Right? Everything we do is we put on everything we do. We put an anthropomorphic spin. So everything has to be seen in the context of humans. Right? Now but that's complete nonsense. I mean, the way we measure time is nonsense. It's only applicable on this planet, and it's not even accurate. Okay? Length, height. Any of our units of measure are complete nonsense, right? And in fact, some of the constants that we have are not constants, like the speed of light. We don't really know the speed of light. Not really. I mean, we have got a good idea, but we've got an approximation, but we don't have the exact figure for the speed of light. And and that's just one thing. So all of the things that we look at as the foundation for our existence are completely arbitrary. Completely arbitrary, right? So if we say we live 100 years, yeah, in the context of this particular planet, where it takes 1 year for this planet to, or more or less, to go around its sun, it takes 1 year of our measure to do that. On every other planet in the solar system, it takes different time. It takes a completely different time to go around the sun. Yeah, some longer, some much shorter. So again, these are all completely arbitrary. So we say, oh well, we live 100 of those rotations. Someone else lives 28,000 of those rotations. And you know what? If we didn't have our kill switch, excuse me, then we would live 100,000 rotations, 1 million rotations. But we have the built-in kill switch. That's a fact. That's a fact. We have a built-in kill switch.
There's the music, guys. Take care, everyone. We'll see you next week for show 330, and stay tuned for a roundtable with Jer Bear.